promise was a united grid of Europe, a high-voltage utopia where energy flowed like water to the lowest bidder. They called it the interconnector revolution. I call it a financial suicide pact. Look at your screen. These aren't just lines on a map, they are the steel arteries of a predatory system, designed to extract wealth through the infrastructure labyrinth. Today, April 24, 2026, the data is undeniable. The price convergence we were promised has mutated into price contagion. Here is the intelligence gap. The Brussels elites won't disclose. When you connect a low-cost energy market to a high-cost one, the low-cost market doesn't save its neighbor. Instead, the high-cost market cannibalizes the price floor of the other. It is an infrastructure black hole where your domestic stability is sacrificed for the spread. The physical shock is already hitting the wires. In the last 90 days, congestion rents across the EU-UK interconnectors have hit record highs, yet industrial production in Germany is flatlining. Why? Because the neural grid is being gamed. You, the taxpayer, are the human victim here. You paid for the copper through grid levies. You pay for the balancing costs when the wind dies down. And now, you are paying the arbitrage tax, because your local power is being auctioned off to the highest bidder 1,000 miles away. While you struggle with the cold pipe reality of rising bills, the grid operators and arbitrage funds are sitting in glass towers, counting the congestion rents. They promised a safety net. They delivered a debt pendulum that swings faster every time a transformer hums. The clock is ticking on European industry. Welcome to Energy Axis Intel. We don't look at the light. We look at the heat generated by the friction of a failing system. The switch has been thrown, but the power isn't flowing to where it's needed. It is flowing to where it is most profitable for the parasitic middlemen of the neural grid. Let's dissect the triple-layer physics of this betrayal. In a perfect world, electricity flows toward the path of least resistance. But in the infrastructure labyrinth of 2026, we have a loop flow crisis. When Germany overgenerates wind in the north, it doesn't just travel to the south. It surges through the interconnectors of Poland and the Czech Republic, clogging their domestic transformers with unplanned transit maze. This creates physical mastication. The heat from these unscheduled flows degrades the insulation of national grids. Economy. To prevent a total system meltdown, grid operators must engage in redispatching. They pay generators to turn off in one place and turn on in another. The cost of this mechanical friction in 2025 alone exceeded euros 4 billion. Consequence: you, the end user, pay this friction tax through your grid fee. The investor sees a system that is physically incapable of handling the very green revolution it was built to support. It is a capex black hole where we spend billions on new cables just to fix the damage caused by the old ones. Now, let's follow the money into the capital strategy. The interconnectors are marketed as security of supply, but in reality, they are the primary tools for price contagion. Look at the economic storytelling of the NordLink. It was supposed to bring cheap Norwegian hydro to Germany. Instead, it exported German price volatility to Oslo. By April 2026, Norwegian citizens are seeing their battery of Europe emptied to satisfy the German industrial deficit, driving domestic prices up by 240%. Who is winning? The grid operators' SOs are collecting congestion, rents the difference in price between two connected markets. They have no incentive to fix the price gap. The gap is their profit margin. In the current debt pendulum environment, the TSOs are reporting record IRR internal rate of return, while the factories at either end of the cable are filing for insolvency. This is not a market. It is a high-voltage siphon. We are witnessing the infrastructure labyrinth being used to bypass national sovereignty. When your local energy is cheaper, it is immediately vacuumed out through the interconnector to solve a crisis in a neighboring jurisdiction. You are no longer a citizen of a country with an energy policy. You are a node in a grid designed for extraction. The steel arteries are not feeding the heart of Europe. They are feeding the vampire funds that thrive on the volatility of the neural grid. And the friction is reaching a breaking point. The physical friction of these overloaded circuits is merely the prologue to a much deeper structural rot, the total surrender of national energy security to the capex black hole. To understand the 2026 crisis, you must look at the infrastructure labyrinth not as a bridge, but as a toll booth. We are currently witnessing the great decoupling of cost and value. Physics. Every time an interconnector like the Celtic interconnector or the Viking link pushes power beyond its thermal limit to chase a price spike, the neural grid suffers harmonic distortion. This isn't just a technical glitch. It is Maze the ghost in the machine. These distortions force national grids to invest in massive synchronous condensers and battery arrays just to keep the frequency from collapsing. Economy. This is the ultimate capex cannibal. We are being told that interconnectors reduce the need for domestic power plants. That is a lie. Because the wind is intermittent across the entire North Sea, you still have to build the domestic backup and pay for the interconnector. You are paying for the same megawatt twice. Consequence. The ROI on these projects is a fiction maintained by regulatory floor and ceiling regimes. If the interconnector doesn't make money from arbitrage, the taxpayer tops up the profit for the private investor. It is financial suicide disguised as regional cooperation. Let's follow the debt pendulum to its apex. In April 2026, the resource adequacy reports are finally admitting the truth. The interconnectors have created a single point of failure. By connecting the grids, we have synchronized the disasters. When a cold snap hits the EU, every nation now looks to its neighbor for power that doesn't exist. This is the arbitrage trap closing shut. The capital strategy here is purely extractive. The elite promise of 2020 was that more cables equals more green. The 2026 reality is that more cables equals more fragility. The grid operators are now demanding a further euros 600 billion for grid reinforcement. Why? Because the interconnectors they built are destabilizing the local networks they were meant to serve. Who is counting the money? The commodity trading houses. They utilize the neural grid to move power, not to where it is needed, but to where the spread is widest. They don't care if a steel mill in Linz goes dark, because electricity prices jumped 400% in an hour. They only care about the settlement price. The steel arteries have become a giant vacuum, sucking the industrial lifeblood out of the continent and depositing it into the offshore accounts of the energy speculators. This is the sovereign betrayal. The system isn't broken. It is working exactly as intended: to socialize the risk of infrastructure and privatize the rewards of volatility. And as the neural grid reaches its thermal limit, the only thing left to burn is your capital. As the physical limits of the copper wires are reached, the infrastructure labyrinth reveals its final, most predatory layer, a digital ghost grid, where the laws of supply and demand are rewritten by the vulture algorithms. By April 2026, the European energy market is no longer run by engineers. It is run by high-frequency trading bots. Physics in the neural grid. Stability requires a perfect 50 A's frequency, but the interconnectors introduce latency gaps. When a bot detects a 0.1% price spread between the UK and France, it triggers a massive power surge. This sudden mastication of the grid creates frequency deviations that physical turbines were never built to buffer. Economy. This is the arbitrage trap in its purest form. These bots don't care about keeping the lights on. They care about the ROI of the nanosecond. By the time a national grid operator realizes they are short on power, the bots have already sucked the reserve dry and sold it to a higher bidder 3 borders away. Consequence: we are seeing flash crashes in energy prices, not downward, but upward. In February 2026, we saw 3,000% spikes in intraday pricing, while the steel arteries were physically idle due to software-defined congestion. This brings us to the capital strategy of the endgame, the regulatory asset-based RIG model. This is the most sophisticated theft in infrastructure history. Grid operators are allowed to charge you a guaranteed profit based on how much they spend, not how much they deliver. The more complex they make the infrastructure labyrinth, the more they need to spend, and the more profit they are legally entitled to extract from your bill. It is a self-feeding black hole. Look at the 2026 CAPEX reports. While European manufacturing is relocating to the US and Asia to escape these costs, the grid operators are reporting double-digit growth. They are building bridges to nowhere while the industrial heartland at both ends is being liquidated. They are not connecting markets. They are connecting a series of debt traps. The sovereign betrayal is now structural. The interconnectors have turned national borders into liquidity pools for the global elite. Your energy security wasn't shared, it was commoditized, leveraged, and sold. The steel arteries have become the veins of a system that only knows how to pump capital upward, leaving the rest of the body to go cold. The algorithms have finished their harvest. The transformers are cooling in the silent factories. And the only thing remaining is the final liquidation of the integrated dream. The autopsy is complete. The interconnectors were never meant to be a bridge to a green future. They are the extraction pipes of a sovereign default. We have dissected the triple-layer physics of this betrayal. The recap: physically, the grid is choking on loop flows and thermal friction. Economically, you are trapped in a CAPEX black hole where you pay for the hardware, the balancing, and the arbitrage profit of the very funds that are driving your industry into the ground. The actionable verdict for 2026 is clear. The integrated market is a failed experiment in financial suicide. As an investor, stop looking at energy producers and start looking at the grid lords who control the infrastructure labyrinth. They are the only ones winning the zero-sum game. For the citizen, the steel arteries are no longer providing security. They are providing infection. The debt pendulum has reached its peak. The next stage isn't more connection, it is the violent, localized decoupling of nations, trying to save their own remaining industrial pulse. The European neural grid is not a brain. It is a parasite that has outgrown its host. You were promised a power union. You were delivered a bailout in disguise. The lights may still be on for now, but the capital is already gone. This is Energy Axis Intel. We don't just watch the grid, we watch the wealth flow through it. The loop is closed. Now decide whose side of the pylon you're on.